They die differently whenever I tear off their heart shields and plunge my blade into the flesh of their heartstones. Whatever powers they had kept until that point, whatever stature their ancient wisdom had afforded them until then, they all face death at the last moment. And when they gaze at me bringing it, my blade dipped in retribution, they reckon in their own way with the meaning of death. Most of the dragons I have hunted have died, consumed by fury and rage, a rage one can hear upon nearing their corpses. It rushes through their veins in pools of black that stain their heartstones, where it emanates the stench of every dead thing on Aethra. With this scent in their nostrils and the blight in their veins, most of them reckon pitifully with death, and they fix their eyes on me, scowling and smoldering, until their anger finishes them. Some of them have died with the conviction that there can be nobility and grace in my oncoming retribution. They always resist, but silently, as if out of pride. But their eyes draw not to me, nor to the pools of blood, nor the pain I inflict upon them, but instead upwards. They look to the skies that are the solace of our kind, or out to the horizons that harbor the last beauty on Aethra. And in those moments, I hear praise on their tongues. In those moments in which I am doomed to emerge victorious, the crash of the blight in their veins becomes as the gentle sway of the oceans, and the stench that so overpowers me seems not to reach them. Their scales reflect the splendor of the heavenly bodies, and the oceans cleanse their veins. Finally, they reckon quietly with death, and they whisper blessings and gratitude, relieved that grace has killed them. And on the rarest missions, neither righteous anger nor noble suffering can describe the death that some of them die. I was sent last week to the Nervesin, the mist-wind rivers of the western sky. It was somehow nostalgic. They used to teach the dragon children to fly in the wind rivers that sweep between the islands, and there was even a yearly competition for the best flyers. I was told it was quite popular and garnered quite the audience, although I never went myself. But this was years ago, before the wind dragon inhabited the area. That wind dragon, she was reviled. She was feared by humans across the lands for her prejudice against them, an ancient vendetta, so the monks said, which only human life could assuage. But even the dragons across the sky hated her for her entitlement and selfishness. She would betray others to dragon hunters if it ensured her life or called a blighted dragon from her territory, even if they had many years of sanity left. I met her once as a child, before I began my training in the capital, and I never forgot her spite against the broken world we inherited and that seething hatred of the gods. She was so feared and abhorred that not even the strongest dragons ventured willfully into her territory, nor even I. Thus, by the end, when her time came, and I was the one sent to end her tyranny, not a single life remained in the Nervesin to mourn her disappearance. None but the one who had finished her. I asked myself if she intended such infernal isolation. Was her behavior a shield from her self-loathing? Was she so afraid of tomorrow that she wanted to die? When I confronted her, she reared up before me and bared her heart shield in the open. "Take my heart," she insisted. "Kill me, dragon hunter, agent of the gods' malice. Take my life now and free me from this wretched prison of a world." I grasped my sword and plunged a boot into the water sheen that covered the island. Swiftly now. With a lunge forward, I pulled my sword down fast enough that the tip split the air with a bang. Hovering a few inches above the water, The sword had cleaved a cut clean through. The water ripples from my boots began to bleed, but there was black and the stench of death in them too. I flicked the blood off my blade and sprang forward. My sword lodged between the layers of her heart shield scale, but she made no resistance. I braced my foot against her body, yanking at the sword hilt to dislodge the scale. It flew off like a splinter of wood against a carpenter's knife, soft flesh palpitating beneath. Still, she made no resistance. Did she not see I intended after her life? Her heartstone shone through the clear tissue above it with a faint and dying glimmer. Could she not see the end oncoming? Did she refuse to reckon with death? I raised my sword. Surely she would fight back, would resist with outrage, grace. Surely she would fight back. But still, she would not fight back. By Aethra, why would she not fight back? I struck at last. My sword severed the artery to her heartstone. She looked at me, her entire being washed in serenity, and she whispered, "Because you are the only one who can save them from me." Her body splashed into the sheen of water, kicking up a torrent of raindrops that smattered upon my armor on their way back down. Blood trailing down my breastplate. In accordance with standard operation, I removed her head and carved out the heart as proof for the warrior marks. The rest of her body dissolved like salt into the water where it had fallen, where it would eventually return to elemental essence. Then, cleansed by the water, her essence would cascade down the waterfall chains into the basin of a few islands below, brushed gently by the wind rivers that the difference in temperatures stirred up. I returned to the decapitated head and the heartstone with my sword still struck through its artery. But then I noticed something. Her eyes were open. No, not merely open. They were glaring at a point behind me, beckoning me to follow, as if their dead, matte glaze were harboring vestiges of an immortal vindictiveness. This wind dragon, she not only refused to treat with death, but had merely refused to die. I moved around to the back of her head and followed her eyes, to where they guided my gaze to the nearby island a few thousand meters above. Was this a final request? I admit, inheriting the will of such a loathed creature unsettled me. As I rode up a wind river to the cavernous islands of the Nervesin, I ruminated over her final words. Because you are the only one who can save them from me. Them. It could not be the humans. She hated them too much. Other dragons? They hated her too much. What could hatred and revenge and loathing have had in her life for me to save? From herself? Was that merely a desperate last resort? That she should bid service from a knight whose only purpose is the destruction of life? Neither righteous anger nor noble suffering emerged that day in the death that the wind dragon died. In my experience, most dragons die consumed by fury and vengeance. Others die possessed by the matchless conviction that there can be dignity and honor in death. She died the death that few dragons die, one I cannot describe. Perhaps, like the others, she tried to reckon pitifully with the summation of all things before the end. I wonder how I shall die.